Hey there, health and wellness fans. Welcome to episode 14 of the YCast, the podcast that's revolutionizing the way men think about their health and well-being and their life, one conversation at a time. I'm Tony LaRosa, and logging in remotely, my partner and co-founder of Project Y. He keeps his friends close and his M&Ms closer. We call him the Rob Father, Rob Davidson. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing well, man. How about you?
Awesome. Look at you.
I feel like I'm always doing something. Like every other show is remote, right? For me, it's amazing.
Well, but, you are on special assignment for Project Y.
Special assignment, exactly. It's called recovery.
It's called recovery.
No, absolutely, yeah. It's nice out here right now. It's a little bit hot though. I'm outside. You can probably tell.
Yeah,
it's about 97 degrees, so it's a little warm.
Well, we love the fake background.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? It's actually the glass behind me reflecting into the woods.
That's awesome.
It's actually a real background. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Legit. Yeah. Not like yours. I'm kidding. Yours is
Well, I hope you're getting some good R&R.
Yeah.
You get recharged.
Recharged. Exactly. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Busy day.
All right.
Lots of things going on. Working on some new projects for Project Y, and we were talking to Dan before we hopped on here, who we're bringing on in a minute, about some of the new products that we're going to be launching on phase 2, which are some creatine products, which is very popular right now. And then I think we were talking about some HMB potential.
Muscle wasting. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so guys, by the way, out there, don't forget, hop onto projectynow.com and pop in Project Y20 the code Project Y20, and you get 20% off our facial hydrating cream or our tightening eye serum, which are selling out pretty quick. We just made another batch yesterday.
It works well. I mean, considering you're 75 and look like that, I mean, it really does well.
It's amazing. I'm glad that you just outed me in front of millions of people, in front of all of 10 people. Rob, you outed me.
Yeah, no, it works well though. I've been using it. Obviously you want to still wear sunblock and things like that, but it's great for tightening. It works over time too, which is really nice. I mean, there's no miracle skincare, but we put a lot of science and effort behind the formula, as you know, Tony. Yeah. We use the appropriate delivery technology as well as the different peptides that we put in there, which has scientific support behind it. So
right. And also everything works a little different for other different people. Things work differently. So
absolutely. I agree.
So this podcast tonight, we're going to explore some multifaceted challenges that a lot of men face in their fitness journey. We did gym intimidation.
We both have faced, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't think we've ever talked to a guy that we know that hasn't gone through some up and down. In their fitness journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of wind there.
Yeah, there's wind. I'm sorry. Can you hear the wind? That's good sound.
Yeah.
These are sound effects that you don't have to pay for. So come on.
We will dive into the science behind these issues and provide some actionable strategies to build some sustainable consistency and progress. Like you said, every man's felt it. That nagging pain, the muscle strains, the the emotional burnouts, the mental breakdowns, all these things during your fitness journey, we've all gone through. So we're going to see if we can cover some of that stuff tonight. Our special guest tonight is Dan Greenbaum. He is, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Greenbaum. Dan Greenbaum. Yeah, I think it's right.
Yeah.
We're at a distance, so he can't beat me up from where he's at. He's out of Denver, gym owner, trainer, functional nutrition, and metabolic health specialist.
Yeah.
And for those of you who'd like to jump on and do a little read up on Dan before we start, you can find Dan at Coach Dan Greenbaum on Instagram. He's got some great reels. You guys will be able to get some
very knowledgeable. There's a lot of people that are out there training and purporting to understand functional nutrition and fitness and don't, but Dan's very knowledgable, and we're excited to have him on, without doubt.
And hands-on. That's the key.
Yeah, hands-on, exactly.
And the gym at prospect.com is his website, and I'm assuming it's the gym, the name of the gym that he owns. So without further ado, let's bring Dan on.
Yeah.
Hey Dan, how you doing, man?
Good, guys. How you all doing?
Doing great.
We're great.
Good to have you on.
We had a great conversation before we hopped on. So much knowledge and so much information back and forth. Really getting excited to get this podcast moving. So I would say, so how do you pronounce your last name, Dan? Is it Greenbaum or Greenbaum?
Yeah, Greenbound.
Greenbaum. Okay, cool.
Yeah, Greenbound. You have it right.
Awesome.
You got an A minus. You hesitated, but you did all right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I like Dan's sign, Jim. There's something above that, but I like it. I like that.
Just the
Jim.
Jim.
That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking
Jim.
about. I love it. That's awesome.
Dan, why don't you give everyone a little bit of background of yourself and just share, experiences, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, sure, guys. Yeah, so I've been in the fitness industry about 18 years. I own my own gym out here just outside Denver, Colorado, which I've had now for about 12 years. I've had a gym for 12 years. I've been strength training and been a coach and functional health practitioner for about 18. And really kind of my background coming from a bachelor's exercise science to a functional medicine degree, a bunch of biomechanics degrees. And I kind of really fell in love with training. I actually wanted to go to medical school coming out of undergraduate, but I fell in love with trying to be more preventative. So instead of fixing somebody, I really wanted to prevent these things from happening. So I fell into training and lifestyle and functional medicine and a lot of things. And really how I look at training and everything together is people want to segregate strength training, working out, and functional medicine and how our bodies work on the inside, but they work together. So we really can't be healthy just strength training and doing cardio. And we can't just be healthy by doing all these great things for the inside of our body. They need to they need to coexist together. And so when I train and I work with all my clients, I really look at trying to optimize their biomechanics, how their bodies are meant to move in the gym. Everyone's built differently. Yeah. Really optimize and have them understand what good programming is and how to understand the progressions in the gym. And then other than that, we're really trying to teach them about nutrition and how to optimize how their body really is. Meaning we look at labs, we look at their hormonal function, because so many people segregate those two things in life. And you realize to really be, basically I call it, people want to live optimally. That word gets thrown around. Everyone wants to be optimal. What does that mean? It means to really have no pains, have a good degree of muscle mass, and feel like you're running 150%. It comes from both of those things working in unison. So when I work with clientele, coach trainers, etc., we try to teach them both of those two things need to happen together.
Right. What would you say? Because I always ask this question to a lot of our guests, especially in the fitness world. What would you say your overall philosophy would be? If you could say like one thing to someone that just walked in the door of your gym, what would it be?
So I guess, it's to condense it down. I just, my philosophy is we need to, if someone's asked me what, I guess, sorry to repeat myself, but philosophy would be, is everybody is individual and how their body works is different. So my philosophy is finding what works for that person with a scientific knowledge base, right? That's going to help pair how they work and how science works together.
Yeah, Rob's ears just went up when you said science.
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
that is the key, right?
And just to add, yeah, that's the key. Just to add, guys, science is a big word that gets tossed around now. Everyone thinks because they say science before something, it's right. Yeah. But the way the body works is biomechanics are biomechanics. And so like Tony, your arm and your arm length or leg length is going to be different than Rob's. So Rob might be able to squat and you might not be able to squat. And so these guys come in, they say, hey, if I want to lift, I got to squat. I'm like, well, maybe not. Right? We're trying to break down these stereotypes where the guy comes in, every time I squat, it hurts. And I'm like, well, let's look and see if this fits your body. And so my really philosophy is we got to find out what fits your body, and we got to figure out how your body responds to certain macronutrients to create something customized to you that might work for somebody else, and maybe not for you.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I like that because you do a personalized approach, which is really the way, and I'll say this, people, I'm sorry, pharmaceutical companies won't like it, but the one size fits all is never true. It's just never true. Yeah. We are all built differently, both inside and out, and different things work for different people. So I love that. Yes. I love that the approach is extremely personalized and well thought out from a scientific standpoint. That's really the key to, understanding your body and learning how to stay healthy at your maximum efficiency. So I like it.
Well, it gives people hope too, because someone's sitting next to you, Rob, and like, oh man, how am I going to get like this guy?
Right.
Which you see all the time. And the perfect answer is, well, you're not like him. You have other attributes that you can focus on, and here's why. And that's where Dan comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of things we see, guys, like, for example, it's a lot of breakdowns. Guys come in and, they'll say, well, I got to bench press, deadlift, and squat. Those are the big motions.
Right.
And, I said, well, what's your goal? I mean, if you love those exercises, we can do those things as long as your body's meant to do them. But a lot of them are like, what? Really? I don't have to do those to build muscle? I'm like, absolutely not. They just don't understand. Like, there's certain principles of how we build muscle. And there's certain principles of how your body moves. And I'm just trying to educate people through that process. And they're like, their minds are blown of like, oh my gosh, I don't have to do that to build tissue, muscle tissue, or be strong. I said, no, absolutely not. If you like to and they fit you, great, but not necessarily the end all be all motions.
Yep, I agree with that. I like that a lot. And that actually probably makes people a little bit less nervous about going to the gym too, or about their program, right? Because they assume, well, why am I having trouble doing this when this is what I'm supposed to be doing? But they're not built for that, and they just don't understand that. So to be able to identify that early on, I think is a great motivator in keeping that person continuing down their fitness path. I like it.
Yeah, and a lot of the things we talk about too is it's very empowering for these people because they feel when they leave, they have this preconceived notion that they're going to come to a gym and stuff's going to hurt. Right. And I'm like, well, no, if we do the right things, you're going to feel amazing. And they walk out the door and they feel so motivated and empowered because like that, I feel great. That was a great workout. Everything felt good. And, and it's so simplistic. If you did something that didn't feel right or something that felt sticky, most of us outside of the gym just wouldn't do it. But in the gym, it's kind of like, well, maybe it's supposed to feel like that. Yeah. And I'm telling these, men and women, no, that's not how it goes. And plus with a customizable approach, even when it comes to diet, it's just like, look, if this is not making you feel good, we don't have to take this strategy. It just might not work for you.
Right.
Well, and there's so much, I guess, information out there it can be good and bad with social media. It's, if you find someone you like and you're listening to them, and then the next minute you scroll, the next page is someone saying pretty much the opposite. So I think it is important to continue doing those face-to-face meetings with someone. Like go into Gym at Prospect and have a face-to-face with Dan and hear it from his mouth. He can assess it right away instead of listening to a bunch of comments that people have no idea what they're talking about.
Dan, can you highlight just at a 30,000 foot level, if you wouldn't mind, how you do that assessment when somebody comes in and they're interested in whatever it is, fat loss or building muscle or rehab, whatever it is, right? How do you actually do that assessment so our viewers understand what that really means?
Yeah, so basically when someone comes into the gym, we usually do a whole session dedicated to what we just call an assessment. So we sit down with them, we'll get some background information. A lot of times we start to ask questions about, like, usually the way I do it is I'll ask people what their goals are and really try to find what I try to do, honestly, guys, I try to find their pain points. Because most people when they come in, everyone will give you these quick regurgitations. Well, I want to just be healthy. And they're just kind of embarrassed to say, look, I'm unhappy with how I look. I hurt. I feel tired. I have no energy. So I try to really dive into what brought them to me because everyone wants to be healthy, right? And that's a huge part of the assessment because it's a mentality, right? So are you a female that's had yo-yo dieted for decades and now you can't lose weight eating 1,000 calories? So once we kind of figure out why they're there, what they've done in the past, we can kind of start the actual assessment because it starts a lot of it, honestly, too, guys. It gives me a set point of how open this person is, what type of trauma they've been exposed to, what type of, how hard can I push them? Can I bring up dieting where they're really not in a mental place to restrict calories? And so I like to establish a baseline of like, what are they really here for?
Sure.
How hard can I push them? What can we bring up? And then at that point, once they kind of build some trust and I try to just kind of really relate to them that, I can help them and really get down to why they're there. And I usually give them some information that's going to help them kind of enlighten them of why things have not worked in the past. I actually put them through a movement assessment. So we basically have a screening patterns where we take them through about 7 to 10 movement patterns. And a lot of them, some are machines, some are different, like just body weight movements, where we just try to look for any type of unsymmetrical patterns or weaknesses where it's like, okay, these motions are really not going to fit their body right out of the gate. So just body weight squats, doing things like a light machine press or a dumbbell press, we can just assess motor control, deficiencies in strength, if they have pain, and just really based on their structure, what things they'll fit into. And they don't really understand that process, but as that allows us to collect a whole ton of data where they might do a squat, oh gosh, this really bothers my knee. And then that's like, okay. And then we can make adjustments to their form. Oh, this press, my shoulder's bothering me. And that will let us adjust. Well, maybe we can't use a dumbbell. Maybe we need a different machine. And after about the 10 exercises, we will build a program around what movement patterns we know work best for their body. So when they come back and we actually do a workout, everything feels really good. But it usually takes us about 50 minutes to 60 minutes putting them through the assessment just to see how strong they really are, where are we starting from, and pains and movements affect how they basically function, then we can actually build the program.
Right. Makes sense.
Well,
Makes sense.
yeah.
Thank you.
Speaking of pains, I think let's jump into injuries, because I know that's a big thing. We got a bunch of emails and questions prior to the show about what to do with specific injuries. So I would say, I would ask you, Dan, along with Rob's question, when you're assessing people, what are some of the common injuries that you see?
So, absolutely. I would say the most common things we see in, I'd say general population of people, and even guys that have lifted in the past: shoulders, lower back, knees, and sometimes we get hips, but those are kind of the big focuses, right? So we'll see basically external rotation, not to get too, anatomy based, but for most people, some type of rotator cuff, labrum, some type of external rotation issue of the shoulder. We see a lot of hips, like, kind of soreness in hips or lower back, and then knees. Those are probably the most common, like I'd say, over repetitive issues we see in people, for sure.
Yeah. And what would you say, to follow up on that, what would you say some of the main causes of some of those critical injuries are?
Yeah. And so we see some of the shoulder stuff, we just see overuse. So a lot of guys, like both men and women, they come from just chronic activities that they did in their youth that they just overused. And then over time, they stopped doing those activities. And then they just developed a really bad imbalance. So they basically, some muscles got really weak and other muscles continued to kind of pull the weight to perform movements. And then they have pain. So a perfect example, like the backside of the shoulder, all the muscles that support the backside of the shoulder, usually our day-to-day activities, we don't do that. But like, let's say you were a volleyball player, or, you were a baseball player or a football player and you were moving your arms all the time. Well, all of a sudden, they just kind of stopped doing those exercises and they stopped working out, and they've overused it through, years of certain sports or just doing some repetitive pattern. And they don't do anything to strengthen the opposing tissues. And now there's pain. Those muscles got weak. There's inflammation. Now my shoulder hurts. Yeah. The knee thing is pretty big with people. Well, I would say let's take a step back. The lower back is the other one. The most common cause of lower back pain right now, guys, is probably glute weakness. Their glutes and hamstrings are super weak. They sit all day. They do nothing to train. And that really stabilizes a lot of the posterior side of the pelvis. And they're just, my back hurts. And they honestly don't understand it's the glutes and the hamstrings that lead to that. And so that kind of ties into the knee pain. People have the creaky knee syndrome. Well, the creaky knee syndrome is the same thing. You have a very weak posterior chain musculature, and all that load's going to the front of the patella when they're bending down, picking something up. They just don't have the muscular support, so they're just loading a lot of the force in the joints. So their knees hurt, right? And so that's probably, I would say, the most common causes we see with those injuries.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I mean, we see a lot of overtraining too, because even if you're, you get to a certain point where even if you're new in your fitness journey, you get, I guess you get like that, fitness high where,
100%.
you never did it your whole life. And all of a sudden now you're in the gym like 5-6 days a week, and you're pounding. And if you're, older and you're not taking care of your joints, or, you have some weight issues or maybe obesity, people just keep going at it. What would you recommend for people? Like, what's that signal you would you would notice from someone if they're overtraining? Is there some magic thing you could say to them, or you would tell off the bat that they're overtraining?
Sure. So a couple of things. You are right. So definitely there is, there's certain exercises and certain exercise fads, not fads, certain modalities of exercises where people are jumping into these exercises that they literally shouldn't be getting into to start with. It just doesn't fit their body, and they're training them way too often, way too frequently. Like, you've never been in a gym and you're going to start to do like really heavy squatting or squats and you have no idea how to do them. Something's going to hurt. You're doing barbell overhead presses, your shoulders are going to ache. Yeah. And again, that mentality of just constant repetition. The thing I tell everybody, and this is again super overly simplified, if you get into an exercise, you do a set and something doesn't feel right, I don't care who told you to do it, don't do the exercise. Like everyone gets into these camps. I got a barbell, I got a bench press, I got a shoulder press. And the guys will get, especially the guys, they'll get into a bench press like, oh God, that hurts my shoulder. And then I'll watch them do 5 more sets. And I'm like, well, if the bench press hurts your shoulder, don't do that exercise. Do the dumbbells. Well, the barbell's better. Well, said who? Well, this guy online. No. End of the day, I don't care who tells you, that's not how muscle growth works. That's not how strength works. So if that does happen, the mistake I think people make is if something feels bad, they won't do any type of that exercise. So for example, you can't barbell bench press and your shoulder's hurting you. There's probably some muscle deficiency somewhere in the shoulder joint. So if you do a dumbbell bench press and it hurts, doesn't hurt at all, that's probably the best choice for you to do, right? So really what the overtraining is twofold. Yes, if you do an exercise that doesn't hurt and you're able to do it pretty consistently, but then you're getting inflammation over time, that's probably overtraining. So if you go in and let's say you can bench press and your strength's going up every week, you feel great. But all of a sudden, after several weeks, it starts to hurt you. It's either it's the wrong exercise, or B, you just can't bench press 5 days a week. Yeah. Like just back off. Like you're just overusing it.
Right. And so that probably happens a lot.
It happens a lot. So when we see actually true overtraining guys, usually if you start to see your strength drop, like you're like, oh gosh, I'm doing 135 bench press for 10. And then all of a sudden, a couple of weeks later, you're dropping 20% less weight. You're probably overtraining. You're doing too much training and you're doing too little recovery to support the demand of what you're doing. And that's why your strength's dropping. And that's the first sign. If you don't stop then, you're probably going to get pain because you're not supporting the muscular system. You're not eating enough food to support that volume of training. And that's your body's way of like, listen, this isn't working. You're getting weaker. Stop there. That's how we kind of signal overtraining. That's the first sign.
It's diminished output. That's when you should stop. That's an easy read too, right? People should recognize that pretty quick, and that's when you need to rest more, right?
Yep. And
a lot of people think muscle grows during the workout. It doesn't. It grows during the recovery, right? And it's hard to get people new that are coming into working out to really understand that, right? So that's something I'm sure you spent some time on.
Yeah, the most thing we see now with people is just like overtraining is really a symptom of just several variables. You have to take into account how stressed you are in life, because training is a stress. It's a good stress, but it's your body doesn't understand the train stress from I got to get to this meeting tomorrow and present something. You're releasing the same hormones, and then if you're not eating enough food, it's just a recipe for you to overtrain, and that's when people get injured because now the muscle is not recovering. You don't have enough strength output, and that's when we see the injuries occur. But to the other question is, if you are doing those things right and you just get something hurts, right? You can try a different exercise. There is no magical exercise for you to get a result. It's the one you can do repeatedly without pain and make progress on. So if your shoulder starts hurting doing a barbell motion, do a dumbbell, do a machine. There's this whole camp of you can't do machines to build muscle or get strong. You have to do a dumbbell or a free weight. They're all just tools. They're all tools that are in your arsenal to help you. And I have some people that just can't do barbells and they look amazing. And so if you're injured, the goal is to stop training altogether. It's to just switch movement patterns, and hopefully you haven't got too hurt. That allows you to train pain-free. And I that's one of the biggest things I probably do on a weekly basis is coach people out of exercises that they have done too long and cause pain. And hopefully it hasn't been so damaging we got to, pull them back. But that's like the thing I probably coach very, very often.
Oh,
Right. How important is warm ups and cool down? Because I know like sometimes you see people get right in, they get right to it, and then other people are stretching, things like that. Is that an age thing, or is that something like everybody, no matter what age, what physical shape, needs to do?
So there's again, I would say it depends on the person, but the what we know right now in the literature and really just from years of experience, you can't come in. Let's say let's say we're doing a lat row or something, and let's say your top set with the lat row was 150 pounds. You can't walk in off the street, put 150 pounds on, and start pulling and think your musculoskeletal system's going to every fiber is going to contract and you're going to feel great. So the warm up could be, some people love to come in and do like 5 or 10 minutes of cardio, increase their blood flow, and then they'll want to do a little stretching or do some activation motions. That's a big word, activation, which are basically some different movements just to turn on the muscles they're going to be working. But simply, in my opinion, activation or warm-ups are just more sets with less weight of the exercises you're going to be doing.
Right.
So like I tell people, yes.
I was going to ask, I mean, just for the differential between static stretching or static warm-up and dynamic stretching, right? I mean, I always teach my football players dynamic stretching or dynamic warm-up is much better than static right before a workout. But I just love your thoughts on that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's funny now. I used to be a really big dynamic guy all the time, like want to do something dynamic to move. And now they're showing a little bit like, then some people are really into the static. Yeah. I still am under the impression I like a more dynamic movement pattern. I think it works better. I've seen it reduce injury a little bit better just because the motions you're going to be forming are dynamic. They're not static. And one of the things that we saw was sometimes if you are doing a static stretch, it actually can decrease the force output the muscle will produce, right? Exactly. And speed it's speed, especially 100% speed. I would say for general population, if something, is it going to hurt you if you come in, you're like, you know what, I just want to do a static stretch, open my shoulders up. Is that really going to diminish your workout? Probably not.
Right.
But for the most part, I like small warm-ups that are more dynamic with lighter weights that the exercise will perform. Because we're kind of getting your body and basically your nervous system ready to perform that exercise.
Sure.
Right.
So like for the row example, if my finishing set, and a lot of people are under this kind of pressure, and they come in, okay, I got 3 sets. So if I have to get to 150, they're starting at like 115, jumping to 135, and jumping to 150. And all my clients or people I come in and said, you can do like 5 sets. You can do some very light warm-up sets, let all those muscles warm up, and then you could start working it, like let's say you can do 90, 100, then 115, then 135 and 150. And when we do that, everyone's like, oh my God, you know what? I feel so much stronger today. I'm like, yeah, because you just did a couple preemptive movements to get your body ready for the main exercise. Right. So I think the best injury prevention really is like, I call them rehearsal sets, where you're just rehearsing the movement you're going to be doing with a light load. So it's kind of like dynamic movement, like kind of like Rob's saying.
Yeah. And speaking of movement, I mean, also we have to take in consideration, just a person's flexibility and mobility, because that's going to be different as well. Individually.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a great point. So the way I kind of phrase it is, everyone has what's called an active range. So one of the things that active range of motion. And so what we do is we try to, in the assessments and when I work with people, we basically look at your structure of like, hey, this is where your limitations are, where we can still keep tension on that muscle and not go into the joint, right? So very easy general guidelines. If you do an exercise and you move through a pattern of that exercise and you do not feel the muscle you want to work, you're outside of the active range. That means we're putting stress passively into tissue that like joints, tendons, and ligaments we don't want. So the old school, just because for easeability, the bench press, everyone's like, bar's got to touch your chest. I'm like, okay, well, you got really long arms. That's a really long way. And you might get a ton of rotation you're not supposed to get forcing the bar to your chest. So a lot of times I'll have a guy do it or a female do it. And I'm like, hey, those last couple inches to touch your chest, did you feel your pecs in your shoulders? No. Okay. Well, that force doesn't just go to, I call it, magical happy land. It's going through the joint structures and into the tendons where it doesn't belong. And so I'll tell them, hey, if you come down, right, and even without any weight, if I can't get my hands close to my chest, right? Yeah. If I put load in there It has no business going any further. And that goes to every exercise.
That makes
so
sense.
Really easy, you start performing an exercise and you can't feel your biceps, triceps, or whatever you want to work. You've gone too far. You went too far.
Right.
Well, some of these strategies to overcome some of the things we mentioned, actually, Keith and I talked about in Gym Intimidation a little bit a few shows back, was about utilizing proper form. And the only way you're going to know proper form, especially if you're new in the gym, is to be able to get some professional guidance, such as yourself, and to correct some of that form. And then be patient, because eventually you will increase your weight. A lot of people get intimidated when they come in and they see these guys bench and they've got like 2 plates on each side, and they could barely lift the bar, and they're pretty big dudes. It comes over time, getting the proper
100%.
form, technique, and then excelling from there.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. One of the things I tell people with progression, they don't understand what progression is. Everyone thinks progression is always adding more weight to something. Right. But understand, like, a lot of progressions for some people, you could come in, use the same weight for the same reps, but do it with more control. That's progression. You will get stronger that way. You could do more repetitions with the same weight. You will get stronger that way. You will build muscle tissue that way. You don't always have to be concerned with just adding load. So I tell my clients when I program stuff for them, you have to earn the right to add more weight. So if your form and you're shaky or you're not executing the movement well and you feel unconfident, you probably shouldn't add weight. Maybe we just work on controlling the weight better, slowing the tempo down, and that's your progressions for this week, maybe 2 weeks. Then from there, maybe we add repetitions. We build up your stability and your endurance in the exercise, but all of those things will cause strength gains and cause you to build muscle. But we've just been so trained when we walk into a gym, got to go up by 5 or 10 more pounds this week.
That's so true.
And it's not that you can't do that, but that's one form of progressive overload.
Yep.
And so for a lot of people getting into, especially my new people in the gym, I usually coach them on the first 2. You have to feel very confident before you can add more load. And what happens is they start seeing results because they can tell that they're controlling the weight better. They can add more reps. And guess what? They'll still feel the muscle really well, if not better, which then lends them to have better results in the future. If your execution's garbage and you just keep adding load, you're going to hit a roadblock in your strength and your muscle gains, just so simple you don't know how to do it very well.
Right. So
and
speaking
you may
of
get
muscle
injured.
gains, yes,
and you get
speaking of muscle gained, let's go back to what Rob was saying earlier about recovery, because we all know it's probably bigger than what most people think, like Rob suggested. So how do we stress the important factor of rest, and what do you recommend people, how many days a week to rest? I'm assuming it would be different for every individual.
Yep. So it's different. It really just depends. What we assess is, and this is hard for everyone to step back and assess, but it's like kind of Rob said, you will not lose body fat and you will not grow muscle tissue if you aren't, and everyone hears recovery, if you don't recover. So what that means is, if you're in a phase of life where you got stress, you got kids, you're not sleeping very much, you really can't train 5 days a week. Just because if you can't get enough healthy calories in and really make sure you're eating to support the energy demands, and your sleep's off and you're really stressed from work, not saying that exercise it's a great tool, but maybe we start you at 3 days a week, and maybe we do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday split, because that gives you a day in between. You can calm down. You can even do full body. And the reason why I like some of the full body programs is the old school, chest, triceps, back, biceps, and legs. Not that that's wrong, but some people, honestly, when they first start, you only really need one exercise per body part. It's what you can recover from. So what I mean by that is, when you go to the gym, everyone's like, I gotta be sore. Guess what? Delayed onset muscle soreness, all that means is we are not building muscle or burning fat. You created so much inflammation because you're not sleeping and eating enough food. You're kind of negating all the positive benefits we're getting from the gym. So you have to retrain people. So you have to retrain someone. So how I evaluate it is, okay, if you're training Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you are so sore, you can't train with a day in between of rest, you're not recovering enough. You're not recovering enough. You need to step back and evaluate your sleep schedule and your health and your stress in your life, as well as how many calories you're consuming. And so for a lot of people, that's what I really kind of gauge with them, right? And you should feel good. So after a week or two, if you're training and you're training so hard and your sleep's off and you start to feel bad, like you just feel less energy, brain fog, your sleep is worse, that means we have overstressed your body.
Right.
The thing that people don't understand is they literally think they need to train as hard as possible, and no matter what their life circumstances, to get a result. You can only achieve results in what your body can tolerate. So the red flags is if you start to feel like worse, you start to feel foggy headed, you start to feel sleepy during the day, your sleep it just actually starts to get even more, like worse than it might already be, you're probably doing too much. You got to do either less sets in the gym, you might need an extra rest day. Those are the signs. But the best part is you can always add more. If you start 3 days a week and you feel good for 2 weeks, add a 4th day. See how your body does.
Right.
Everybody just wants to come out of the gate 5 days. You know what happens? They get too sore, they get inflamed, they feel crappy, and they stop going to the gym.
Yep.
Exactly. So I think the overarching theme of what we're talking about right now is just like listen to your body. I mean, I think we all know our bodies well enough that could be in different aspects of physical activity or mental activity, emotional. We all kind of know each other.
Yeah.
So it's same thing in this context is making sure, like, you know, those early warning signs are important. And over time, if you're in the gym long enough or you're on your fitness journey, even if you're walking, you know right away if you go out for a walk and you're feeling a little odd that morning, maybe take it lighter, you know. So listen to your body. I wouldn't push it either, especially if you're new and not as experienced in this type of activity.
Yeah. I think where it gets lost is the mentality with, you know, right now is everyone's like more is more, just push through it.
Yeah.
And there are some people that definitely don't like to exercise and they need a little extra motivation. And there's a difference between I don't want to do it versus, gosh, I really don't feel good. And my body, again, it's almost kind of like you're catching a cold. That's like the best symptoms, like biofeedback, it's called, we can give to somebody. They almost feel like they're catching a cold. That usually means you've done too much.
Yep.
That's too much. Right?
I think we've been there, all of us, at one time. Yeah.
Oh, God, we've all been there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm honest with my clients. I've learned the hard way multiple times.
Yeah.
And even if I start a new program, sometimes I'm like, yep, that was too much. I got to pull back.
Exactly.
Well, then there's that brings up immunity. And Rob, you can probably talk a little bit about this. But that, you know, there is a link. I know there's some studies out there for how exercise, you know, continual exercise helps, you know, with immunity.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely helps build immune support. Absolutely. Obviously, there's many reasons for that. I'm sure, Dan, you can get into it too. But some of the reasons is hormone level differentials, right? So reducing stress by working out, lean muscle mass, increase in T cell activity because of working out, cleaning out inflammation. That's another thing. You know, you have called phagocytosis in the cells and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely helps build the immune system.
And I would think overtraining would potentially do the opposite. And
yes, it would.
Down.
Yeah, exactly. It is. You got to find that happy medium, right? Yeah. That's really the key, is knowing your body, like Dan said, understanding, reading the signs and the red flags, so to speak. And then, you're definitely, once you hit that, I'll say, sweet spot in your workout and understand your body, that's when you really do build your immune system and you feel much better. No question.
Yeah. And especially for people that are like in a gym where it's heavily populated and you are, you know, maybe overtraining and weakening your immunity system, you know, there's going to be a ton of germs rolling around. You know, I know I've come out of the gym many times and gotten a cold and realized, oh, it had to be from the gym.
Yeah.
Touching the equipment and everybody, you know, touching the same bars and cables and what have you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Along with that, we should mention, you know, nutritional deficiencies as well, as far as immunity and some of the role.
Immunity and recovery and working out. That's why, when you break down muscle tissue and you're not appropriately, adding the right nutrition, that's going to tax immunity right there. I mean, because you got a breakdown of muscle and inflammation. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So if you think about immunity, a lot of our immunity comes from our stomach and our gut, right? It's our gut health. Unfortunately, when we overtrain or we do too much, we downregulate how the stomach digests foods and processed foods. So we create inflammation. And sometimes when it's so much, right, a lot of that gut health and the proper gut flora really, it gets taxed, right? Cortisol is too high. And all it has is reaction from basically coming from the digestive system in the stomach, which is a huge way that our immune system functions. So a lot of times when people are overstressed, I don't know if you guys ever remember, you're in college, you're pulling all-nighters to study for a test. After finals are over, you get a cold, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Less sleep,
yeah.
too high cortisol, you get sick. Well, the same basically processes that are happening for like staying up and not sleeping are happening when we overtrain. And so we have cortisol going out of check. We have digestive dysfunction, which affects how our immune system works. So same thing happens, right? In those situations, catch cold easier. And you're in a gym where there's a lot of germs. So you can happen much faster.
That happens to me every time if I'm working straight for whatever, how many months or weeks, and then take vacation, I get sick on vacation, not at work. Seriously, because you have that, right?
Point, that happens to me every time I go on vacation with my family, right? As soon as I let me put up the gas, I get sick.
Yeah.
Like by the end of vacation, I get sick.
Yeah. It's interesting.
So in those moments when, if you're listening to your body and you're like, oh, I can go to the gym, I feel a little run down, but I think I'm okay. There's nothing wrong with moderating your workout and pulling back a little bit, some of that intensity.
Not at all. You think about training and, for these people that are trying to gain muscle, feel better in life, the goal is you want to be active. If you go and push too hard and you get sick for a week, you just took away that activity and that healthy thing you're trying to do for yourself. Yeah. So by pulling back a workout, I tell sometimes, honestly, especially when it's nice outside, go for a walk outside, get some sunlight, go for a walk, de-stress yourself. Like the other day, I was gung-ho. I trained at midday. I've been kind of burning the candle from both ends. I just went and took a walk outside, felt refreshed. Right. And guess what? I felt better the next day, so I could train again. Versus forcing myself to work out, running myself down even more, and then I could train the rest of the week.
Yeah. I'll do that too. I'll cycle and just take 5 days off from working out. I'll do something different. I'll walk and I'll, like to Tony's point, go for a walk or, whatever, a run or whatever, something different. I'll do that and just take that whole 5 days, no muscle training, nothing. So
I consider it stress management, 100%. Switching up, being diverse.
Right.
The other thing too is I think we kind of glazed over was and haven't mentioned yet is hydration. I bet you have a lot to say about hydration, Dan. People in the gym and must drive you nuts.
Yeah, that's probably one of the other, once we get, so think of like a lot of the structures, like I kind of give people tiers of things to do, but water is kind of in that first tier because like the low hanging fruit for people is literally most people, most commonly, I find are not eating enough whole foods and enough like healthy calories to support their goals. And secondly, no one drinks enough water. It's crazy. People have no idea. Well, I drink water. I'm like, okay, so I want you to do me a favor. I want you to fill up a 32-ounce water bottle and see how much you drink today. They come back. They're like, oh, I didn't even finish it. And I'm like, because we get up, what do? Coffee. They have a cup of coffee when they get up in the morning. They haven't had anything to drink for 8-10 hours plus sleeping. They're already dehydrated. Wake up, coffee, more dehydrating. Then they're busy. They get the day started, maybe a little bit of water here and there, and they do not realize how that impacts mental acuity, satiety, muscle contraction. So that is a huge thing that we try to tell our clients. I tell my clients, and it's crazy how hard it is for people. Like we got to set reminders and, have a water bottle on your desk, but they are so out of the habit of just hydrating themselves.
Right. Speaking of the mental side of it, let's get into that mental aspect of, number one, you're probably at some point battling motivation. And then, you may see other people getting gains and you're not. So then you're dealing with like some self-doubt. So beyond the physical aspects of it, we're all constantly going through this mental battle and procrastination. So what do you suggest? I mean, as far as like lack of motivation and procrastination, as far as those two go, what are some of your suggestions for people getting into their workout fitness journey?
I think people think fitness is like a light switch and it's all on or all off. And so in a sense, look, you got 30 minutes, go to the gym for 30 minutes, go for 20 minutes. Right? Don't think just because, you feel tired and your workout's supposed to take you an hour that you shouldn't go to the gym because you just don't have an hour in you. Right? No one's ever regretted going to the gym for 20 minutes. Right? They're like, well, at least I went and did it. right? And so I think the mentality is people think, well, if I don't go for all 60 or I can't get all my workouts in this week, I'm just not going to go. But again, it's not an all or nothing. It's when we talk about fitness, and everyone that's been in the industry, including myself, it's a marathon. It's consistency over time. You're going to have times where you're going more, you're going less. There's times where you have to set realistic goals. So a lot of the things that we coach on, and I want people to understand, you set a realistic goal. If you look at your schedule and there's no way you're going to the gym 4 days a week, don't say you're going to go to the gym 4 days a week. Go 2. Right. You only got 40 minutes, do 40 minutes. And people are trying to always set themselves up to fail. Don't do that, because that's how we see people just never getting into a routine. You can always add more. But these people here, they read these studies, oh, I got to go for this long, or this person does this. But in reality, it's really just you versus you. It's about nobody else but you. And there's times where I fell a victim of this, and just, in my journey. But at the end of the day, you just have to be okay. One of the hardest things, and I love, I have a family, I have a daughter. And when my daughter was born, man, I wanted to be around. I wanted to be a dad. And I wanted to be there in those first couple of weeks and just not do anything. And, it was a really hard challenge being so ingrained in the fitness culture. And I was like, oh my God, if I don't lift for 2 weeks, I'm just going to fall apart. Right? And you know what happened? Nothing. Nothing.
Exactly.
Did I miss it a little bit? Sure. But you know what? It's not all or nothing. We went for walks with my daughter. I enjoyed the time with my wife and my family. And if anything, I was excited to come back. Right. But people have to understand it's going to ebb and flow. There's going to be stressful times. It doesn't mean you're sabotaging your gains. You should just, eat whatever you want. Just understand, set yourself up for realistic timelines. I have clients just the other day. She's really a super high-end entrepreneur. She's trying to launch a new product, super busy. And she trains 3 days a week. And she's all stressed out. Oh my God, I'm going to lose my strength. I've been doing so well. Oh my God. And she's stressing about literally more than the new thing she's trying to do in business about missing her workouts. I said, listen, what do you think? Let's look at your calendar. Okay. You can probably train maybe once a week, train. You can walk every day. Let's just do that. You'll be totally fine. Worst case scenario, you'll walk for 2 weeks or 10 days. You just go for a walk a day, and we'll get back to it later. And all of a sudden she's like, really? I'm like, yeah, really. And then we take the pressure off ourselves, where she's not trying to cram something in, do too much, and then we just schedule her to come back. And we give her like that pass to know that's okay for right now. And people have to understand that. And again, that's been a great tool, and just giving and allowing yourself to shoot, man. Like, there's days I'm really tired, and this is such a like, I call it a bro thing. I'll just go out to the gym floor. I'll do some arms and abs just because I want to give myself a mental break. It's not going to do anything for me, but it just makes me feel good, and I can take a break from my work. And then I come back, I feel good, I move my body a little bit. Great. Right. And then there's like times that, like Rob said, sometimes I'll just say, this week it's too stressful. I'm just going to go for some walks. I'm not going to train. But it's, you gotta, like, what I do is I look at my weeks and I actually come to terms with that. Right. And I plan it in to be okay.
Right.
That's good. That's a good way to look at it too.
Important.
And muscle has memory too, right? You build that foundation. You build that strength, you're going to get it back. If you did.
And that's a critical thing. No one's gaining body fat in a week or two, right? No one's losing muscle in a week or two. None of the science supports any of those claims. It's more people mentally just decompose because they just don't give themselves slack. You need to give yourself that leeway.
I mean, the motivation, I read this one time, the motivation is it's not a constant. It's almost, you have to treat it like a muscle, that you have to keep training it time after time. And some days it's going to be down. Some days you're going to be super motivated.
Yeah, it ebbs and flows, definitely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And
with everybody.
To that point, to Tony, I tell this to one of my guys who's one of my favorite clients. He always wants to feel like he wants to train every time he sets foot in the gym. Like, he's just going to have a crushing session where it's like he feels like $1 million. All his weights go up. Best feels great. And the days he doesn't, and finally over time, I said, look, man, if I felt like $1 million every time I went for a workout, dude, it would be like, it's half the time, right? The idea is you have to know that you're not going to feel at the highest high all the time, and that's okay. Still do your workout, right? Some days I'm not going to hit more weights or more reps, but I'm there doing my thing. And after I'm done, I feel really good, right? So you have to understand that, and the motivation for people is really, for the most part, to understand what is your real underlying goal for doing this. And understand, like, whether it's to be better for your family, move more, that's motivating. So for my guys that don't have fat loss goals, and I have clients that are 75, and some of them have muscle gain goals and body fat goals, but a lot of them are like, look, I just want to be able to play with my grandkids. Like, I want to be able to run around with my kids. And a lot of times, some of the days they come in, they don't want to do it. And I'm like, look, you do this workout, you're going to be able to go play with your grandson today and move that much better. And that's motivating to them.
You got to find your why. Everyone has their why. Connecting your workouts to some of those deeper values. Your longevity, your health, your family,
all the above,
all that stuff comes into play.
Yeah, and I think the two things that you said that were important is finding your why and reciting that to yourself the times you don't feel like going, and also understanding it's natural. You're not going to feel like going every day. Yeah. There's probably days everyone has that they feel more motivated to do work and less motivated. That's how it's going to be. And once you understand that, it's like, oh, that's normal. Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I think one of the other underrated things too that we need to, make sure people do too is reward themselves. A reward doesn't have to be like.
Well, you mean like my Pizza Fridays, right?
Pizza Friday.
Yeah, but I mean, there's other rewards.
Yeah, of course.
But I think that's the one thing people get hooked on is the only way I'm going to be able to reward myself for working out and being motivated is having a pizza or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. Do it, but.
So that's a great point, Tony. And again, and some of that is fun, but this is another thing I talk about with a lot of my clients too, is you have to find ways to measure your progress because that's a reward, right? So people will always figure out, well, if the scale's not going down, I'm not losing body fat, I'm not rewarding myself. I don't feel like there's a reward at the end of the tunnel. And they just always want to gauge things, especially like, am I getting stronger or am I losing body fat? They forget how far they've come a lot of times, right? Like it's always the next 5 pounds or the next, weight loss, or it's the next, how much more muscle did I gain? And, some of these people just don't step back. And I'm like, whoa, just look how much better you feel. You can move, you can go up the stairs without pain. You can, you lost 20 pounds over the last couple of years. Like you got to see those things as rewards where we just forget so quickly. We're so inundated by quick knee-jerk things. I'm going to gain muscle in 12 weeks. I'm losing 20 pounds in 12 weeks. And I have clients that come in. I'm like, you remember when you came and saw me? You could barely walk up the stairs.
Right.
And now you can go out and run a mile. Now you have no pain. They forget. And so sometimes you just got to sit and literally step back and appreciate how far you've come, right? And so for some people, it's the fact like, you know what? I'm so proud that you've come into the gym now and consistently worked out for 6 months. I don't care what your results are. You've been here and you feel better. Your mood is better. You have more confidence. You have to gauge all of these things that exercise and health gets you besides just how I look in the mirror at that 1 second. Because that's where people tend to really have a hard time, and the reward isn't there, right?
Great reminders, exactly. They're great reminders of why you're doing what you're doing, right?
Yeah, and I think
enjoy those wins, right? Those little wins at every step. So that's a good point.
Yeah, and we should internalize some of that and not constantly look towards social media all the time, because I think that we fall into that comparison trap and. Perfectionism is something that's every time you scroll you're going after that next person and the next person and this guy's telling you to do something different. So I think there's the fear, there's a fear of failure, and then you start comparing yourself to other people. So I think going back to what you said is just focusing on what's good enough for me right now. Consistency over perfection. And like you were saying, you walk into the gym, if you weren't feeling great, you'd go and do some biceps and abs, and just to, stay in that mental state. So, a mediocre workout is better than no workout, I guess.
100%. And that's something that like everyone needs to really, really understand, right? Like, you see, like I said, social media has been good and bad, but people think every workout these people are doing are these like smashing sessions, breaking records. But at the end of the day, look, man, we all have bad workouts. There's sometimes, you know, I just want to, I'll only work out for 20 minutes. I'll miss workouts. It's part of the game. It's part of the game. The one other thing that I think that I see a lot with people that, you know, have been in the gym, and a lot of us, you know, we get into this business, but a lot of us, you know, we have self-confidence issues, you know, we have a hard time seeing progression and progress. Is I see it a lot where you just have to learn how to take a compliment and really understand. Like someone tells you, oh my gosh, you're doing so well, you look great, and people are like, man, they'll kind of do, like, I call it the flip, just trying to look like you. And I'm like, you know, and instead of just being like, thank you, I've been working really hard. And like, that's just a building a part of yourself where like you really can take in, oh man, someone's recognizing my hard work, whether it's a spouse, whether it's someone at the gym, whether it's someone on the street that knows you. Those are like really good rewards that you don't want to brush off, because other people are noticing your hard work. A lot of times, you know, we try to compliment people, and I feel really proud of my members that come in, you know, never been in a gym, and I'm just proud that they've been coming in consistently. And I say, great job. And it really means a lot to those people. So when someone reaches out and says that to you, just stop, really understand, like, you're doing a good job and someone else is noticing, and just don't brush it off. Because that's a huge reward that people they have a hard time taking that compliment because they just don't have a lot of confidence in how they look or how they feel. And it's really an important thing mentally, right, to be able to allow yourself to be there, because that leads to you feeling good and really understanding that positive mindset going forward.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
I mean, it's an emotional roller coaster. You know, life happens. We have relationship issues. We have job, you know, issues, and it all affects our time, our energy, and, you know, coming out of that too with a good state of mind is important. Have you seen, I mean, have you worked closely hands-on with people that are, you know, in that state of mind, and how do you get them out of it?
Like in the state of mind, like Tony, just give me a little more background, like in terms of,
just like on like relationship issues and stress at work and things like that. Are you working with people that are coming to the table with those, you know, that mental anguish and emotional baggage, I would say, and how do we get them out of it?
Yeah, I'm going to say, honestly, everyone I see has some underlying issues. Everybody does. We all have it, right?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, we all do. And some are more extreme, but, you know, majority of the people I train, clients, family, they're getting in, you know, look, there's times you come in, you get an argument with your spouse, you know, you're in a bad spot, right? You have a tough time at work, people lose jobs, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong in terms of things that people experience throughout their lives. It's really challenging. The idea to them is just to really give them things that they can handle, and we go through the process and we just give them something realistic that they can adhere to, that's going to contribute positively to their well-being, not negatively. Because you see these trainers, you know, they don't understand, there's no relatability. You have, you know, perfect example, I've had a female, and there's just things that, you know, there's, again, not female, I've had males and females, where there are some really life factors that happen, like that are really heavy. Loss and, you know, unfortunate, you know, like, you know, some, you know, development of cancers and health scares. And that's really challenging. The idea is to say, listen, right now, exercise is going to help take care of you, but really, what do we have the bandwidth to do right now? And we just give them things that they can handle that's going to de-escalate the situation and not contribute, like, well, you know, you still got to get your diet in, make sure you stick to the calories. And, you know, someone's got a spouse in the hospital and they're like, dude, I don't care about the food I'm eating. I'm just trying to make sure my family's okay. And guess what? That's right. I don't care what you eat, just what's going to help you today. For the workout, what feels good? What do you want to do today? What can you do to make yourself feel good? Is it going to, even if they don't see me, is yoga going to make you less stressful? What can we help? And you just ask, communicate with your clients. And for the results I give, and even if I'm not working with you, what makes you feel a little less stressed? And that's what we're going to do. That doesn't weigh and make the situation worse. And we've all been there. And I've had times in my life, and my wife has health issues. And sometimes, man, it's whatever is going to make her feel good in those times. That's what we're going to do. And sometimes I have to talk her out. Yeah, and some of these hard drivers, like, again, I have a lot of really type A people that would just run through a wall, and I'm like, let's not do that. You got a lot of stuff. Let's
Right.
not run through the wall this week. Let's really just kind of rein it back. What sounds good for you to do? And I just try to come up with, from ground zero, what is going to help get through this time without me adding a stress by telling them they need to do a certain amount of exercise or eat a certain amount of food. Right.
Yeah. I know this trainer who, so long time ago, but he trained at one of the LA fitnesses I was going to, and his client would just show up to the gym. They'd put their rollerblades on and they'd go rollerblade up the mountain.
Amazing.
And come back and he was done.
Amazing.
It's like,
yeah, amazing.
Whatever works for you.
Yeah, whatever works.
And I think a lot of those one day at a time type things, develops consistency and, building just better habits overall. And I think, I know for myself, attributing, some type of behavior, to an existing habit, like, after I brush my teeth, I'm going to do 10 push-ups or something like that.
Yep.
Everyone's checking their phone. If you're going to look on your phone for 15 minutes, say I'll do 15 minutes of sit-ups or something like that.
Sure.
I mean, it works for me. I think it's a good technique for people to try, especially in the beginning if you're struggling and you don't have that consistency or motivation.
Yes. Yeah. And it's kind of like we talked about. It's kind of like something is better than nothing situation where it at least keeps you in the pattern of healthy things. Right. Like trying not, like when it comes to nutrition or exercise, like, hey, if that walk feels good, let's just use walks right now. And I try to get them away from habits where they're relying upon the extra glass of wine or the extra beer or not moving or just, binge eating. It's like, look, I know this is really tough. If it happens, it happens, but let's not dwell on it. So if you go home and you have the whole pizza because you're stressed out of your mind, guess what? You wake up tomorrow, it's a new day. You don't have to do that again. Right. As opposed to, again, falling into the pattern. Right.
And it could just be an environment thing. Like get out of the house,
Get outside. Get in sunlight.
Get out of the house. Yeah. Like, and again, most people, they always have the tool to go for a walk. You don't have to drive anywhere. You're at work, go outside for 30 minutes. You have control of what you're going to put in your body so we can make good decisions. And again, it's just, we're real people. Like we stress is real and we internalize it. People sometimes when they're stressed, they want to have certain foods. It's just understanding that every day is a new day. So if you do, like I said, because Rob likes pizza, so do I. There's times where I want to eat everything. I just, there's some times where, maybe it doesn't help, but I have what I'm going to have, and I wake up the next day and I'm like, okay, got that out of my system.
Exactly.
I'm going to go back to my consistent eating habits.
Right.
I'm not using that as a slide for a week.
That's
of bad eating.
Right. Last show, I think it was last show we had Rick on. We were talking about like fitness apps and things like that.
Yeah.
What are some of your suggestions on just overall just tracking your progress with everything from like sleep, from nutrition? How deep do we have to get to make an impact individually? What do you suggest?
It's a great question. So I would say one of the things I love my clients to do, and again, we try to meet where they're at, barring their past eating history. So if we have a female or we have a male that has a past, they have a bad relationship with food, I will tend to tell them not to track calories. But one of the first things app-wise I use is it's a very good teaching tool to have people track their food. It's very eye-opening just because no one understands. Everyone comes in and tells me they eat healthy. Every single person. Well, I eat healthy. I don't eat fast food.
Right.
Like, okay, well, that's great. And I'm happy you don't eat fast food, but how many calories you consume? Like, do you know how much protein you eat? And again, I don't expect them to know, but every single person that I have trained, and I would say that gets very high level results, tracks their food.
Yeah.
Every single person. And no one has ever regretted. They all come in, they're like, oh my God, I should have done this sooner. I had no idea. And
it's the biggest it's one of the biggest motivators for me. Just knowing what 100%. I'm taking in and 100%.
Yeah. Look at it this way. I had one guy that did not. So one of the apps I like, there's a couple good tracking apps. I've used Chronometer. I think it's easy to put in. It has one of the most accurate databases. But perfect example, some of my guys don't, some of the people just like, look, I don't want to type it in. And there's a resistance. Even just taking pictures of their food, I'm like, I just want you to take pictures. Do a food journal.
Right.
They start to make better choices because they don't want to write it down. They don't want to take a picture of it. I don't even ask them to show it to me. I'm like, I just want you to log your food. And all of a sudden after a week, they're like, ooh, I don't want to write down that extra slice of pizza. I still want to put it, I didn't want to write it down. And it's an accountability to themselves. Yeah. And then slowly they start to understand really, and it teaches them, they don't even have to track eventually. They understand, okay, this many ounces of protein is about this, this many ounces of an animal protein that gives me this much protein. They learn to eyeball their food so much better. They understand, if I get that muffin from Starbucks, that's 400 calories. That's not a good choice. Where before, because they didn't see it, they're like, it's not that bad. How bad is it? Right. And so that's one of the first things before any of the sleep trackers and step counters, etc. So I would say after that, depending on the person, I think the second tool, and there's a lot of talk about steps, and it's really just person specific. The people that work at desk jobs, as another tool, I will ask them to track their steps, because everyone's like, I move, I get up throughout the day. And I'm like, okay, you get up and down from your desk and go to the kitchen 10 feet away. You have no animals. You don't take any walks. You don't leave your house. And they come to the gym. I'm like, yeah, but in the gym, we're strength training. You don't do any steps. They are shocked. Like, oh my God, I only took 2,500 steps today. I'm like, yeah, I know. And they don't understand like how much energy they don't expend throughout the day. And so and some people are more responsive. You got to know yourself. If someone's really hyper compulsive, it's going to freak them out. I won't do it. But they're just tools where like, hey, some people it's very motivating to like see those numbers. But those are probably the first two things. Yeah. To be perfectly honest, I have an Oura ring. I'm a super nerd. I track tons of crap, and I like all of the information. But most people don't need any of those things. Like they don't. Like I would say, bar none, the most important is I like to have to start something like a food diary or some type of food tracking, because everyone thinks they eat healthy and they don't. And then secondly, I think steps can be helpful for people that really work at a desk and just don't have a lot of outdoor hobbies, just to see, gosh, I don't really move a lot. And that's a tool. So those I would say before any of the sleep stuff, etc., which again, I don't think is bad, but most people don't need all those advanced tools. They're so far from it.
Yeah. And if you're not a gadget person, or you don't like wearing watches or anything like that,
totally.
You hang around with some like-minded people, that are in the gym, maybe join a fitness class, find a workout partner or something like that. There's online communities. So you can get support. It doesn't have to be from an app or anything like that, but you can find your way through it if it makes you feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
And some people, honestly, guys, I'll just tell them, and some of them are super compliant. They'll start to make changes in their food without tracking. They'll start to move more by taking walks every day. It's the people that are constantly kind of not following the things that we've laid out in their plan that need the extra motivation. And some people just, the tech stuff for them, it's super motivating. They're really tech people, and having the data is like really, really motivating for them. Go for it. But other than that, if you're already walking, moving, exercising, and your food's dialed in and you feel good and you have a handle on it, you don't have to track. You don't have to a fancy watch to track your steps either.
Right. If you're in the Denver area, I suggest you checking Dan out at the gym at Prospect. Did I say that right?
That's right. Yeah, Gym at Prospect. Yeah.
The gym at prospect.com. Just go in for an evaluation. It's very helpful. And if you're not in Colorado, Denver area, you could check him out online. You can find him at, what's your IG again, Dan?
It's Dan Greenbound Coaching.
Dan Greenbound Coaching on Instagram. You've got some great shorts, like they're 30-second shorts, some great information. You're doing a great job messaging people. And I think that's a lot of, some of the only things people need are just a, 30-second shout out, understanding a certain topic without getting too deep into any science or, difficult to understand that you're just not used to. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
physical awareness, mental resilience, emotional management are crucial for anybody's successful fitness journey. And it was a pleasure talking to you tonight, Dan. I think we got time. I think we got part 2. We definitely skipped a lot.
Definitely,
but I want to make sure it doesn't go too long. But I would say, we'd love to have you back at some point.
Absolutely.
So check Dan out. You're in Longmont?
I'm in Longmont. We're about 20 minutes outside of Boulder. Boulder.
Sure.
We're about like 45 minutes from like downtown Denver.
Awesome. That's the gym at Prospect, guys. We're going to end it here tonight, Dan. Thanks again so much. We really appreciate your time and your knowledge, and love to have you back on soon. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with a friend. And don't forget, you can drop your questions or experiences in the comments below. You can find the links to Dan in the comments below, and shoot him a message. I'm sure he's fine with answering some questions out there.
Always.
To lead people to a better fitness journey. Special thanks to RCJ Productions, Keith and Lindsay, our producers. Check those guys out. Keith, where can they find you?
Go to www.rcjproduction.com.
If you're looking for a podcast to start, or you're looking for some engineering work, or if you're looking for some tutorials on just, starting your own podcast, Keith and Lindsay are the people to go see. Check us out on YouTube channel at the Ycast, Facebook, Project Y, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok, Project Y Now. We'd love a subscribe and a like button, guys. Check us out on our app, Project Y, and we will see you on July 2nd. Thanks, guys, and don't forget to hit that let's like and subscribe button. Take care.
Yeah.